Radical Truth is a podcast produced by TBLI Group and hosted by Robert Rubenstein. TBLI is making the financial system work for all. Our podcasts cover the wide range of ESG and impact investing topics. What it is, why is it booming, is it really helping, is impact regenerative in nature, how will climate change impact investments? There will be regular interviews with thought leaders, some known, some not known, but all brilliant, and we will have engaging conversations with all of them. Can we create an economy based upon well-being? Let's make the financial system work for all. This is Radical Truth. Rethinking Climate Change with James Arbib, co-founder of Rethink X. James Arbib will share his vision on addressing the climate challenge in an effective, uplifting manner. James, or Jamie, is the co-founder of Rethink X, a not-for-profit think tank that analyzes and forecasts technology disruptions and their impact on society using a complex systems-based framework. He is co-author of the book Rethinking Humanity. He is also founder of Tellus Matter, a grant-making foundation that supports work on issues related to sustainability with a focus on the finance system. Jamie is chairman of a family office based in London and specializes in clean tech venture capital. What will you learn? Are we doomed? What solutions are there in the short term? Do we need to focus only on adaptation? This is Radical Truth. I'm extremely happy and fortunate today because we have a real mega thought leader in the whole climate change and technology space. James Arbib is the co-founder of Rethink X, and chairman of a family office. He was also a very active investor in clean tech and sustainability. And when we were chatting the other day, I felt very enthusiastic and actually less frightful of the future because a lot of the solutions to climate seem to be there. And he was able to kind of put them all in a compact row. So, Jamie, thank you so much for joining us. And just so people know who you are, if they're from another planet and they have never heard of you, tell a little bit about who you are and what does Rethink X do, and your activity in the sustainable and addressing basically climate change.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Robert, and it's great to be here today. So yeah, a little bit of background. So I've spent most of my career as an investor. I spent 15 or so years in clean technology investment. Also spent a period of time alongside that with a foundation that I set up that was looking to solve environmental problems. We were particularly focused on the finance system and looking at ways in which we could help drive capital, from the old system into the new emerging system. And about 10 years ago or so, I guess, I got very frustrated with the environmental narrative, the kind of doom and gloom behind it. And I also had a feeling at that point in time that we were doing ourselves a disservice, that clean energy had a number of cards that we could play in its favor, beyond just the environmental benefit of clean energy. If you knew anything about cost curves, even 10 years ago, it was clear that if they carried on the same trajectory, that the economics of clean energy and electric vehicles, for instance, would begin to outcompete, fossil fuel, gasoline vehicles and conventional power systems. So there were economic benefits, but there were also benefits in terms of kind of energy security, national security, even at some level, as well as resilience benefits and so on. And as environmentalists, we were just playing the one card, the environmental card, and that was causing kind of polarization in the debate. Certainly in the US, there was a kind of conflation between clean energy and a kind of top-down, government intervention approach that alienated a lot of conservatives, and it didn't need to. Was my feeling, and I ended up anyway in a kind of strange series of events that I won't bore you with. I ended up being asked along to speak to the U.S. military, who were running a scenario planning exercise, and they were asking the question, what will it mean for geopolitics if we get off fossil fuels quicker than we're expecting? And as part of that scenario planning exercise, they invited 10 experts along to speak to them, and they had a group of experts from kind of big, august institutions, big, major oil companies. The State Department were there, big NGOs that you would recognize, and all of them pretty much had the same forecast for the adoption of solar PV and electric vehicles. There were these sort of straight line forecasts out into the future, forecasting maybe even by 2050, 10 or 20% adoption of solar PV and electric vehicles and so on. And this guy called Tony Sebo got up halfway through this day, and he said, well, that's not how technology disruptions happen. They're not these kind of, slow incremental progressions. They're rapid, they're non-linear. It's the S-curve of technology adoption. And, these things are over by the 2030s. And if you guys are going to make your plans based on these sort of faulty analysis, on this faulty analysis, you're going to make some major mistakes. And I basically said the same thing. And Tony and I, anyway, ended up going out for coffee afterwards and speaking for months about everything from education to healthcare to food and agriculture and obviously energy and transport, about how we were on the cusp of transformation of some foundational sectors of our economy. And yet we are totally unaware of the speed at which these would happen, but also the scale of the impact of these transformations. And so, we after a few months felt we had no choice but to set up a research group that could properly model and understand the complexity of technology transformations. And that's what Rethink X became. We're a not-for-profit research group. And our mission is really to provide decision makers, whether they're policymakers, investors, business, or civic leaders, with better data analysis that captures the possibilities that are emerging. So that's really the background to what we're doing.
But if you look at when we chatted, you gave a whole litany of solutions that are there, and that the time frame where they will really kick in. Many people think that we should just be pricing carbon, get a carbon tax in place, and the rest will happen. Do you think we need a carbon tax?
A carbon tax can accelerate things, Robert. But let's step back for a moment, and if you give me a moment, maybe I can explain what we're doing differently, and that might throw some insight on how we differ from most of the mainstream analysis that you see from governments, from NGOs, from Wall Street. Because the models that we tend to use to try and forecast the future, they're what we term equilibrium models. Okay, so any complex system, whether it's a climate system, it's a sector of the economy, it's an ecosystem, the human body, you name it, the dynamics of change are similar, right? And so what you get these long periods of incremental progress with the systems in an equilibrium state, right? And it's held in equilibrium by a series of constraining feedback loops, negative feedback loops that act to resist change to that system. But at certain points in time, those systems can transform very rapidly into another system state, right? And that's driven by accelerating feedback loops. So accelerating feedbacks begin to take over from the negative feedback loops and drive that kind of S curve of technology disruption, but also the S curve that you see. That's, if we think of the climate system, right? This is a great example of these dynamics at work. So we're in a period of time now where we're in an equilibrium state, right? So there are a number of negative feedback loops that are keeping our climate relatively stable. Okay, so we emit huge quantities of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, but the majority of them are sucked up by the ocean or by plant growth. And there are a number of other negative feedback loops. And so, the increase in atmospheric